The dust was already settling into Katherine Foster's lungs when she realized the wagon master had lied about the shortcut through Devil's Canyon, and now the sun hung like a copper coin in the bleached sky while vultures traced lazy circles overhead. She stood beside her broken wagon wheel, the spokes splintered like broken ribs, her water supply reduced to half a canteen, and the realization creeping through her mind like poison that no one was coming back for her. 3 days earlier, she had been part of a small trading caravan heading from Tucson to Agua Caliente, Arizona, in the scorching summer of 1881. The wagon master, a thick-necked man named Calloway with tobacco-stained teeth, had assured everyone that cutting through the canyon would save them 2 full days of travel. Katherine had questioned it privately to Mrs. Henderson, the older woman traveling with her husband to open a mercantile, but Mrs. Henderson had waved away her concerns with a weathered hand. "Calloway has made this run a dozen times," she had said, her voice certain. "He knows these territories better than anyone." But when Katherine's wagon wheel had caught in a hidden crevice between 2 rocks, snapping the axle clean through, Calloway had barely slowed the rest of the caravan. He had ridden back, looked at the damage with eyes that held no sympathy, and delivered his verdict like a hanging judge. "Cannot wait for repairs. You have got tools and supplies. Agua Caliente is 15 miles northeast. Follow the canyon wall until you see the Twin Peaks, then head due north. You will hit the town by nightfall tomorrow if you start at dawn." "You cannot just leave me here," Katherine had protested, her voice rising with the kind of fear she had never felt before, not even when her father died and left her alone in Philadelphia, not even when she had decided to head west to start teaching school in a territory she had never seen. "Got 12 other people depending on me to get them through safe," Calloway had said, already turning his horse. "You are young and strong. You will make it just fine." The rest of the caravan had rolled past her, faces turned away except for Mrs. Henderson, who had at least had the decency to look guilty as her wagon creaked by. Then Katherine had been alone with just the wind and the heat and the terrible silence of the desert. She had spent that first day trying to repair the wheel, but the axle was beyond her skill. The sun had beaten down on her like a hammer on an anvil, and she had been forced to rig a shelter using her canvas tarp in the side of the wagon. That night, coyotes had howled in the darkness, and she had sat awake with her father's old pistol in her lap, praying she would not have to use it because she had never fired a gun at anything living. The second day, she had accepted that she needed to walk. She had packed what she could carry in a canvas satchel, the half canteen of water, some jerky, hardtack, a wool blanket, matches, and her small Bible. She had also taken the pistol, though she only had 6 bullets. Everything else, including the 3 trunks of books she had planned to use in her schoolhouse, had to be left behind. Following Calloway's directions, she had walked along the canyon wall as the sun climbed higher. The heat was unlike anything she had experienced in Philadelphia. It was not just warm, but aggressive, pressing against her skin, stealing moisture from her mouth, making every breath feel like inhaling from an oven. Her dark traveling dress, appropriate for a lady but insane for desert travel, soaked through with sweat. She had removed her jacket within an hour, scandalized by her own impropriety but desperate for relief. By midday of the second day, she had begun to suspect Calloway's directions were wrong. The canyon wall seemed to curve endlessly, and she saw no Twin Peaks, only the same brutal landscape of red rock and scrub brush and scattered saguaro cacti standing like sentinels. She had rationed her water carefully, but her lips had already started to crack. That night she had found a small overhang and huddled beneath it, wrapped in her blanket even though the temperature remained warm. The desert darkness was complete, a blackness she had never encountered in the city where gas lamps pushed back the night. She had tried to pray, but the words stuck in her dry throat. Now, on the third day, Katherine knew she was in serious trouble. The sun was climbing toward noon, and she had maybe 3 mouthfuls of water left. Her head pounded with each heartbeat, and her vision had started playing tricks on her. Twice she had seen water shimmering in the distance, only to watch it dissolve as she approached. She had stopped sweating an hour ago, which even she knew was a bad sign. The Twin Peaks Calloway had mentioned were nowhere to be seen. Either he had given her wrong directions, or she had gotten turned around in the maze of canyon walls and rock formations. Every direction looked the same, hostile, empty, and indifferent to whether she lived or died. Katherine sat down on a flat rock, allowing herself a brief rest. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the canteen and wet her lips with the tiniest sip. The water was blood warm and tasted of metal, but it was precious as gold. She forced herself to put the canteen away to save the last sips for when she truly needed them, though part of her mind whispered that moment had already arrived. She thought about her father, dead 2 years from pneumonia, and how he had always said she had her mother's stubbornness. Her mother had died when Katherine was 12, but she remembered her as a woman who never quit anything she started. That stubbornness had driven Katherine west, against the advice of her aunt and uncle who had wanted her to marry the pharmacist's son and settle into a safe, predictable Philadelphia life. "I want more than safe," she had told them. "I want to matter. I want to teach children who need teaching to build something in a new place." Now dying of thirst in an Arizona canyon because she had trusted a wagon master's lie, her ambition seemed foolish. She stood up, legs shaking, and forced herself to keep walking. If she was going to die out here, it would not be sitting down. The sun reached its zenith, and the heat became crushing. Katherine's thoughts started to drift in and out of focus. She walked past a cluster of prickly pear cacti and distantly remembered reading that you could get water from cacti, but she could not remember how. And when she tried to touch one, the spines drove into her palm. She pulled her hand back with a gasp, blood beading on her skin. She kept walking, one foot in front of the other, because stopping meant dying, and she was not ready to die. The canyon around her seemed to shimmer and breathe. Once she thought she heard her father's voice calling her name, but when she turned, there was nothing but empty air and dancing heat waves. The sun had started its descent toward the western horizon when Katherine's legs finally gave out. She stumbled and fell hard onto the rocky ground, catching herself on her hands. Pain shot through her palms, already blistered from the heat. She tried to push herself up, but her arms would not support her weight. "This is it," she thought distantly. "This is how I die." She rolled onto her back, staring up at the brassy sky. The sun seemed to fill her entire field of vision. She thought about Pennsylvania green summers and cool rain, and the library where she had spent so many hours as a girl. She thought about all the children she would never teach, all the books she would never read, all the life she would never live. Her eyes drifted closed. The sound of hoofbeats on rock pulled her back from the edge of darkness. At first she thought it was another hallucination, like the water mirages or her father's voice, but the sound grew louder, more distinct, accompanied now by the creak of leather and the metallic jingle of spurs and tack. Katherine forced her eyes open. A shape moved against the sun, a dark silhouette that resolved itself into a man on horseback. The horse was a big buckskin, and the man wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. He swung down from the saddle with an easy grace and dropped to one knee beside her. "Lord have mercy," he said, and his voice was deep and rough like gravel in a creek bed. "How long have you been out here?" Katherine tried to speak, but her tongue was thick and useless in her mouth. No sound came out except a dry rasp. The man moved with quick efficiency. She heard him uncorking something, and then a canteen was at her lips and water, blessed water, was trickling into her mouth. She tried to gulp it down, but he pulled the canteen back. "Slow," he said firmly. "Small sips, or you will just bring it back up." He let her have another tiny sip, then another. The water was cool and tasted of nothing but itself, which made it the most delicious thing Katherine had ever experienced. After a few sips, he stopped and capped the canteen. "More," she managed to whisper. "In a minute," he said. "Just let your body adjust." Now that the immediate desperation had eased, Katherine could see him more clearly. He was perhaps in his mid-20s, with sun-darkened skin and several days' worth of beard stubble. His eyes were a startling blue-gray like storm clouds, and his face was all hard angles and weathered lines. He wore dusty range clothes, denim pants, a faded red shirt, leather vest, and the kind of practical boots made for long days in the saddle. A gun belt rode low on his hips, the revolver looking well used but maintained. "Can you sit up?" he asked. With his help, Katherine managed to push herself into a sitting position. The world spun dangerously for a moment, and she felt his hand steady on her shoulder. "Easy now," he said. "You are in bad shape. How long since you had water?" "This morning," Katherine said, her voice still scratchy. "Just a sip. Before that, yesterday evening." He gave a low whistle. "You are lucky to be alive. What in God's name are you doing out here alone?" "Wagon wheel broke," Katherine said. She found that speaking was getting easier as the water began to work through her system. 3 days ago. The wagon master said Agua Caliente was 15 miles northeast, said to follow the canyon wall to Twin Peaks. The man's jaw tightened. "Calloway? You know him?" "Know of him. He has a reputation for cutting corners and abandoning people when it suits him. But this is low even for him." He held out the canteen again. "Few more sips?" Katherine drank gratefully. Each sip seemed to bring her further back from the edge. "What are Twin Peaks? I never saw them." "Because they are not northeast from here. They are northwest. And they are not 15 miles. They are closer to 30. He gave you directions that would have walked you right past Agua Caliente and deeper into the desert." Horror washed through Katherine, cold despite the heat. "He tried to kill me." "Maybe not tried, but certainly did not care much whether you lived or died." The man stood and walked back to his horse, returning with a damp cloth. "This is going to sting." He cleaned the cactus spines from her palm with gentle care that surprised her, then wrapped the hand in a strip of clean cotton. His hands were rough and calloused, but his touch was careful. "What is your name?" he asked as he worked. "Katherine Foster, from Philadelphia. I was traveling to Agua Caliente to teach at the school." "Owen Porter," he said. "I run cattle between here and Tucson, but I also guide folks through the territories when I can. Was heading back from Tucson when I saw vultures circling and figured I should check what they found." "Thank God you did," Katherine said fervently. Owen finished wrapping her hand and sat back on his heels. "Can you ride?" "I have ridden before," Katherine said. "Not well, but I can manage." "Good enough. We need to get you out of this sun and get some real food and water into you. I have a camp about 5 miles from here near a spring. We will go there first, let you recover properly, then head to Agua Caliente tomorrow." He helped her stand, and Katherine was embarrassed by how much she needed his support. Her legs felt like water, and her head swam with each movement. Owen kept a steady hand on her arm until she found her balance. "I can walk," she said. "No, you cannot," Owen replied bluntly. "You will ride, I will walk. It is not up for debate." He lifted her into the saddle with surprising ease, as if she weighed nothing. Katherine settled herself as best she could, gripping the saddle horn. The horse, a gelding named Buck according to Owen, stood steady and patient beneath her. Owen gathered the reins and started walking, leading Buck through the canyon with the confidence of someone who knew every rock and turn. Katherine tried to stay alert, to pay attention to their route, but exhaustion was crashing over her now that the immediate danger had passed. She swayed in the saddle, and Owen glanced back. "Hold on if you need to," he said. "Buck has steady feet. He will not let you fall." Katherine leaned forward slightly, gripping the saddle horn with both hands. The gentle sway of Buck's walk was almost hypnotic. She watched Owen's back as he walked ahead, the easy confidence of his stride, the way he seemed to belong to this harsh landscape in a way she could not imagine belonging anywhere. "Why were you out here?" she asked, needing to stay awake, needing to keep talking. "Checking on a water hole my cattle use," Owen said without turning around, "making sure it had not dried up. This time of year, water is everything." "Everything," Katherine agreed. thinking of how close she had come to dying for lack of it. They walked in silence for a while, navigating through narrow passages between towering rock walls. The shadows were lengthening now, and the temperature had started to drop from unbearable to merely oppressive. Katherine saw lizards skittering across rocks and a roadrunner racing parallel to them for a few moments before darting away. The desert, which had seemed so lifeless in her desperate walk, was revealing itself to be full of hidden creatures now that she was not dying. "Do you have family in Agua Caliente?" Owen asked. "No. The school board hired me through correspondence. They are supposed to provide a small house and a salary. I hope they still will, even though I have lost all my books and most of my belongings." "Where did you leave your wagon?" Katherine tried to remember, but the last 3 days were a blur of heat and fear. "I walked all day yesterday and half of today. I do not know if I could find it again." "I will find it," Owen said. "Tomorrow, after we get you to town, I will backtrack your route and bring your things in. You do not have to do that." "Yes, I do. You will need those books for teaching, and I am guessing you do not have money to replace them." He was right. Katherine had spent nearly everything she had on the journey west. "I will pay you what I can." "We will work something out," Owen said, and something in his tone told her not to argue. As the sun touched the western horizon, painting the canyon walls in shades of orange and purple, Owen led them through a narrow gap in the rocks. On the other side, the landscape opened into a small basin where a spring bubbled up from the rocks, creating a shallow pool surrounded by green grass and a few cottonwood trees. After miles of brown and red, the green was startling. "Welcome to my camp," Owen said. He had a simple setup: a bedroll under the trees, a fire ring with a coffee pot and cooking supplies, and his saddle and gear arranged neatly. It was the camp of someone who spent more time outdoors than in someone who had reduced life to its essentials. Owen helped Katherine down from the horse and guided her to sit on a flat rock near the spring. "Drink as much as you want now," he said, "but still take it slow." Katherine knelt by the pool and cupped water to her mouth. It was cool and sweet, and she could feel it bringing her body back to life with each swallow. She drank until her stomach felt full, then sat back with a sigh. Owen had unsaddled Buck and was now building up the fire. "Got some beans and salt pork," he said. "Not fancy, but it will fill you up. And coffee if you want it." "I would love coffee," Katherine said. "I've not had a proper cup since Tucson." As Owen prepared the meal, Katherine watched him work. He moved with economic efficiency, no wasted motion, everything done with practiced ease. She found herself wondering about his life. What had brought him to this territory? Whether he had family somewhere. "Have you always been a cattleman?" she asked. "No," Owen said. "Grew up on a farm in Missouri. My pa raised horses. But after the war, things got hard, and when he died, there was not enough left to keep the farm going. My mother passed when I was young, and I had no siblings, so I sold what I could and headed west. That was 6 years ago. I was 19 and stupid as a box of rocks. And now?" He glanced at her with a faint smile. "Now I am 25 and only moderately stupid?" Katherine found herself smiling back. "I am 22 and apparently stupid enough to trust a wagon master who wanted me dead." "He will answer for that," Owen said quietly. "Calloway operates out of Agua Caliente sometimes. When we get there, I am going to have words with him." There was something in his tone that made Katherine think those words might involve more than just talking, but she was too tired to pursue it. The smell of beans and pork cooking over the fire was making her stomach growl despite her exhaustion. Owen served up the food on tin plates, and Katherine ate ravenously. The meal was simple, but after 3 days of only jerky and hardtack, it tasted like a feast. The coffee was strong and bitter, and she drank 2 cups. As darkness settled over the desert, Owen added more wood to the fire. The temperature had dropped dramatically now that the sun was gone, and Katherine was grateful for the warmth. Stars began appearing overhead, more stars than she had ever seen in Philadelphia, a vast river of light across the black sky. "You should sleep," Owen said. "Take my bedroll. I will keep watch." "I cannot take your bed," Katherine protested. "You can and you will. You have been through hell. You need proper rest. What about you? I will be fine. Done plenty of nights by the fire. Katherine was too exhausted to argue further. She moved to the bedroll, which smelled of leather and wood smoke and something indefinably masculine. She lay down with her head on Owen's saddle, which he had positioned as a pillow, and pulled the blanket over herself. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You saved my life." "Just glad I found you in time," Owen replied. He was sitting with his back against a tree, his rifle across his knees, his face half shadowed by firelight. Katherine meant to stay awake, to keep him company since he was giving up his sleep for her, but her body had other ideas. Within minutes, she had fallen into a deep, dreamless sleep, the first real rest she had had in 3 days. She woke once in the night to find Owen still sitting guard, the fire burned down to coals. She saw him stand and walk the perimeter of the camp, checking on the horses, scanning the darkness. Then she slept again. When she woke the second time, dawn was breaking over the canyon rim, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Owen was already up, the fire rebuilt, the coffee pot bubbling. He glanced over as she sat up. "Morning," he said. "How do you feel?" Katherine took inventory. Her head still hurt, and her body felt like one giant bruise, but the crushing exhaustion and desperate thirst were gone. "Better. Much better." "Good. We will have breakfast, then head to Agua Caliente. It is about 4 hours if we ride steady." Over a breakfast of hardtack fried in pork fat and more coffee, Katherine found herself studying Owen more carefully in the morning light. He had the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from living a hard life outdoors. His hands were scarred and rough, his face lined beyond his years, but his eyes were kind when they met hers. "Tell me about Agua Caliente," she said. "What should I expect?" "Small town, maybe 200 people on a good day. Got a main street with a saloon, general store, church, and a few other buildings. A lot of ranchers and miners in the area. Town serves as a supply stop. The school is small, just one room, but they have been needing a teacher bad since the last one married and moved away." "Are the people decent?" "Mostly, like anywhere. You got some good folks and some bad, but the community values education. They raise the money to hire you, so they will appreciate you." Owen saddled Buck and then lifted Katherine up into the saddle again. This time she felt steadier, more capable. He swung up behind her, and she stiffened at the sudden closeness. "Sorry," Owen said, his voice near her ear. "Only got one horse. This will be faster than walking." Katherine was acutely aware of his presence behind her, his arms reaching around her to hold the reins, his chest against her back. It was scandalously intimate, but there was no alternative, and after he had saved her life, she could hardly complain about propriety. Owen urged Buck into a steady walk, and they left the camp behind. The morning air was cool, almost pleasant, but Katherine knew that would change as the sun climbed higher. They rode through country that was breathtaking in its harsh beauty. Towering saguaros, red rock formations carved by wind and water, distant mountains purple against the horizon. "It is beautiful," Katherine said quietly. "I did not see it before. I was too scared." "Takes most folks a while to appreciate the desert," Owen said. "It does not give up its secrets easy. But once you learn to read it, once you understand it, there's nowhere else like it." "Do you love it here?" She felt him shift slightly behind her. "Yes, I did not at first. The heat, the dust, the danger, it all seemed too much. But this land has a way of getting into your bones. It demands respect, but if you give it that respect, it gives you something back. Freedom, maybe. Space to breathe." They rode in comfortable silence for a while. Katherine found herself relaxing against Owen, accepting the warmth and solidity of him. She had been raised to be proper and reserved, but the desert had stripped away many of her carefully maintained walls. This man had saved her life. She trusted him in a way that went beyond social convention. "What about you?" Owen asked. "What made you leave Philadelphia?" "I wanted to matter," Katherine said. "I know that probably sounds silly." "Does not sound silly at all. In Philadelphia, I was just another unmarried woman of moderate means and no particular prospects. My father had been a bookkeeper, respectable, but not wealthy. After he died, I lived with my aunt and uncle, and they made it clear I was a burden. They wanted me to marry, to become someone else's responsibility. But I could not imagine spending my life keeping house for a man I did not love, raising children in a city that felt like it was suffocating me. So you came west. I read about the need for teachers in the territories. It seemed like something real, something important. Children here need education just as much as children back east, maybe more. They are building a new world out here. I wanted to be part of that building. You will be, Owen said. The kids in Agua Caliente need you. Their parents work hard, but most of them cannot read or write much beyond signing their names. They want better for their children. The sun climbed higher as they rode, and the temperature rose, but it was nothing like the brutal heat Katherine had endured alone. With water, shade from Owen's body, and the steady movement of the horse, the heat was manageable. Around mid-morning, they stopped at another small spring to water Buck and rest. Owen helped Katherine down, and they sat in the shade of a rock outcropping. "Can I ask you something?" Katherine said. "Go ahead." "Why did you never marry? Or have you?" Owen shook his head. "Never married. Came close once back in Missouri before the war. Girl named Sarah. But when I left to head west, she did not want to come. She wanted the farm life, the settled life. I wanted something else, though I could not have told you what at the time." "Do you regret it?" "Sometimes. Mostly no. I think we would have made each other miserable trying to be something we were not." He glanced at her. "What about you? No sweetheart back in Philadelphia?" "There was a man," Katherine admitted. "The pharmacist's son I mentioned. His name was Charles. He was kind and boring in equal measure. He proposed 3 times. I said no 3 times. My aunt said I was a fool." "Were you?" "No. I wanted more than kind and boring. I wanted someone who made me feel alive." Owen looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he stood and offered his hand. "We should keep moving." They rode on through country that gradually became less desolate. Katherine began seeing signs of habitation, fence lines, cattle grazing in the distance, a windmill turning slowly against the sky. The landscape was still harsh, but it was a harshness being slowly tamed by human effort. It was just past noon when Owen guided Buck up a small rise, and Katherine saw Agua Caliente spread out below them. The town was exactly as Owen had described. Small, dusty, a single main street with buildings clustered along it like chicks around a hen, but to Katherine after her ordeal, it looked like paradise. "Welcome home," Owen said quietly. They rode down into town, and people stopped to stare. Katherine knew what they saw. A man and woman riding together on one horse, her dress torn and filthy, her face sunburned, her hair wild. She imagined the gossip already starting. Owen guided Buck to a stop in front of a building with a neatly painted sign, Henderson General Store. Katherine felt a flash of recognition at the name. An older couple emerged from the store, and Katherine recognized Mrs. Henderson from the caravan. The woman's face went white when she saw Katherine. "Miss Foster," Mrs. Henderson gasped. "You are alive! Thank God you are alive!" Katherine slid down from Buck's back, ignoring Owen's offered hand. She walked straight up to Mrs. Henderson, and the older woman actually took a step back. "No thanks to you or your wagon master," Katherine said coldly. "He left me to die in the desert with false directions." "We thought," Mrs. Henderson began, but her voice trailed off under Katherine's stare. "You thought it was easier to leave me than to help me," Katherine finished. "Where is Calloway?" "Gone," Mr. Henderson said, coming to stand beside his wife. "Headed south to Tucson yesterday. Miss Foster, we are truly sorry. We should have insisted he wait for you or leave supplies." "Yes, you should have," Owen said, still mounted. His voice was quiet but carried an edge like a knife. "Calloway gave her directions that would have killed her. Only reason she is alive is blind luck and the grace of God." A small crowd had gathered now, drawn by the commotion. Katherine saw a man in a dark suit and clerical collar, several women in sun-faded dresses, men in work clothes and range gear. The minister stepped forward. "Miss Foster, I am Reverend Matthews. The school board sent me to meet your caravan when it arrived. We were told you had decided not to come." "Told by who?" "By Mr. Calloway, when the caravan arrived without you." Owen made a sound low in his throat that was almost a growl. "So he did not just leave her to die, he tried to cover it up." "I want him arrested," Katherine said. Her voice shook slightly, reaction setting in now that she was safe. "What he did was attempted murder." "We do not have a sheriff here," Reverend Matthews said gently. "We are too small. The closest law is in Tucson, and that is a 2-day ride." "Then I will go to Tucson," Katherine said. "You will do no such thing," Owen said, dismounting. He stood beside Katherine, a solid presence. "You are barely on your feet. What you will do is rest, recover, and let me deal with Calloway." "I do not need you to fight my battles," Katherine said, though she was grateful for his presence. "Not fighting your battle, fighting mine. A man like Calloway gives all of us who work these trails a bad name. He needs to answer for what he did." Owen looked at Reverend Matthews. "Where is the school and the teacher's house?" "End of the street, past the church. Small house next to the schoolhouse. We had it cleaned and ready for Miss Foster's arrival." "Good. I am taking her there now. She needs food, water, and rest. Tomorrow I will go retrieve her belongings from her wagon." Owen took Katherine's elbow gently but firmly and guided her through the crowd. She heard whispers starting, speculation about who Owen was and what had happened, but she was too tired to care. They walked down the dusty street, past the saloon where piano music tinkled faintly, past the church with its simple wooden cross, to a small adobe house with a neatly swept front step. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house was simple but clean. One main room with a stove, table, and 2 chairs, a small bedroom with an iron bedstead, a washstand with a basin and pitcher. Everything Katherine needed and nothing she did not. Owen helped her sit at the table, then filled the basin from a water barrel outside and brought it in. "Wash up," he said. "I will go get food from the store." "You do not have to," Katherine began, but Owen was already heading for the door. "Yes, I do," he said. "Be back in a bit." Alone for the first time since Owen had found her, Katherine felt the emotions of the last few days crash over her. She buried her face in her hands and let herself cry great shaking sobs that tore through her chest. She cried for the fear she had felt dying alone in the desert. She cried for the betrayal of Calloway and the others who had left her. She cried from relief that she was alive and safe. By the time Owen returned carrying a crate of supplies, Katherine had washed her face and pulled herself together. He set the crate on the table and began unpacking. Bread, cheese, smoked meat, coffee, eggs, butter, canned goods. "Henderson would not take payment," Owen said. "Said it was the least he could do. Also sent over bedding which his wife is bringing." As if summoned, Mrs. Henderson appeared at the door carrying a bundle of quilts and linens. She set them on the bed, then turned to Katherine with tears in her eyes. "I am so sorry," she said. "I have not slept since we left you. I knew it was wrong, but I was too cowardly to stand up to Calloway. Please forgive me." Katherine looked at the older woman and saw genuine remorse. "I am alive," she said quietly. "That is what matters. But Mrs. Henderson, if you see injustice happening and you say nothing, you are part of that injustice." "I know," Mrs. Henderson whispered. "I know." After she left, Owen prepared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and coffee. They ate in silence, and Katherine could feel exhaustion pulling at her again. "You need sleep," Owen said. "Real sleep in a real bed." "What about you? Where will you stay?" "Got a room at the boarding house when I'm in town. I will be fine." Katherine stood, swaying slightly. Owen caught her elbow. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I owe you my life." "You do not owe me anything," Owen said, "but I'm glad I found you." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something unspoken but powerful. Then Owen stepped back, breaking the moment. "Get some rest," he said. I will check on you tomorrow before I go looking for your wagon." After he left, Katherine lay down on the bed, which was more comfortable than anything she had slept on in weeks. She pulled the quilts over herself and closed her eyes, but her last thought before sleep claimed her was of Owen's storm gray eyes and the feeling of safety she had felt in his presence. She slept through the afternoon and evening and did not wake until dawn the next day. Sunlight was streaming through the small window when she finally opened her eyes, feeling more like herself than she had in days. Her body was still sore, and her face felt tight with sunburn, but the crushing exhaustion was gone. Katherine got up and found that someone, probably Mrs. Henderson, had brought more supplies and left them on the table. Soap, a small mirror, a brush and comb, and a simple but clean dress that would fit her better than her ruined traveling clothes. She heated water on the stove and washed herself thoroughly, scrubbing away days of dust and fear. The water in the basin turned brown. She put on the clean dress, which was pale blue cotton, practical and cool. She brushed out her hair, working through the tangles patiently, and braided it into a simple plait. Looking at herself in the small mirror, Katherine barely recognized the woman staring back. She was thinner than she had been a week ago, her face sunburned and peeling, her lips still cracked. But her eyes looked different, she thought. Harder, older. She had walked into the desert as a Philadelphia school teacher playing at adventure. She had nearly died there. What had walked out, saved by a cowboy with storm gray eyes, was someone else. A knock at the door pulled her from her reflection. She opened it to find Owen standing there, hat in hand, looking freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt. "Morning, and," he said. "You look better." "I feel better. Come in." Owen stepped inside, and the small house suddenly felt even smaller with his presence filling it. "I am heading out to find your wagon," he said. "Should be back by tomorrow evening if all goes well. Wanted to check on you first." "I will be fine," Katherine said. "The people here have been kind. Reverend Matthews stopped by last night while I was sleeping and left a note saying the school board wants to meet with me tomorrow." "Good. That's good." Owen shifted his weight, and Katherine realized he was nervous, which was endearing on a man who seemed so capable and confident. "Miss Foster, Katherine, I wanted to say—" "Just Katherine," she interrupted. "I think we are past formalities, do you not?" A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Katherine, then. I wanted to say that I'm glad you are all right. And when I get back, if you would allow it, I would like to call on you. Properly. I mean—" Katherine's heart did something complicated in her chest. "You want to court me?" "Yes." Owen met her eyes directly. "I know we just met, and I know you probably think I'm just some rough cowboy, but I have not been able to stop thinking about you. The way you kept going even when you thought you were dying, the way you stood up to Mrs. Henderson yesterday, the way you talk about wanting to matter, I have never met anyone like you. You are not just some rough cowboy," Katherine said softly. "You are the man who saved my life. And yes, Owen Porter, you may call on me when you return." The smile that broke across Owen's face was like sunrise. He took her hand, the one he had bandaged 2 days ago, and lifted it to his lips. The gesture was old-fashioned and courtly, surprising from a man who made his living in the saddle. "I will be back soon as I can," he said. Katherine watched from her doorway as Owen rode out of town on Buck, leading a pack mule he had borrowed. She stood there until he was out of sight, one hand pressed against her chest where her heart was beating too fast. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity. Katherine met with the school board, a committee of 5 men and 2 women who were thrilled to have her and apologetic about her ordeal. They showed her the schoolhouse, a simple building with benches, a blackboard, and a wood stove for winter. Classes would start in 2 weeks, giving her time to settle in and recover. She met her future students when their parents brought them by to introduce themselves. There were 14 children ranging from age 6 to 15, a mix of ranchers and miners' kids, all curious and a little shy. Katherine felt her purpose crystallizing. These children needed her. This was why she had come west. Mrs. Henderson became a frequent visitor, bringing food and supplies, clearly trying to make amends. Katherine accepted her help, but kept a certain distance. Forgiveness would come, but trust had to be earned back. Reverend Matthews and his wife invited Katherine to church on Sunday, and she went, enduring the stares and whispers. After the service, the community women descended on her with questions and advice and thinly veiled curiosity about Owen Porter. "He is a good man," one older woman told her. "Quiet and keeps to himself mostly, but honest. He helped my son when his horse threw him last year, sat with him for hours until the doctor could come." "He does not come to town much," another woman said. "Lives mostly on his ranch, about 20 miles south of here. But when he does come, the ladies notice." She gave Katherine a meaningful look. Katherine deflected the questions as gracefully as she could, but inside she was counting the hours until Owen returned. He rode into town just as the sun was setting on the second day, leading her wagon behind Buck and the mule. Katherine saw him from her window and rushed outside, her heart leaping. Owen swung down from the saddle, and his tired face broke into a smile when he saw her. "Found it," he said, "about 15 miles southwest. Fixed the wheel enough to get it here." Katherine walked to the wagon and saw her 3 trunks of books, still strapped securely in place. Relief flooded through her. "You brought everything. Promised I would." Owen began unloading the trunks, carrying them into her house despite her protests. When everything was inside, he stood in the doorway, dusty and tired but pleased with himself. "Thank you," Katherine said. "I do not know how to repay you for everything you have done." "Do not want repayment," Owen said, "but I would like that chance to call on you if the offer still stands." "It stands," Katherine said. "Would you like to stay for dinner? I am not the best cook, but I have learned a few things from Mrs. Henderson." They ate together at her small table, and the conversation flowed easily. Owen told her about finding her wagon, about the signs that coyotes had been sniffing around it, about the beauty of the desert at dawn. Katherine told him about meeting her students, about her plans for the school, about the mix of nerves and excitement she felt. As the evening darkened, Owen stood to leave. "I should go. Do not want to compromise your reputation." "My reputation likely already compromised," Katherine said wryly, "given that we rode into town together and everyone saw. Still, you are the school teacher. You need to be above reproach." Katherine walked him to the door. "When will I see you again?" "I have work at the ranch that will keep me busy for the next week. But after that, may I take you to dinner? There is a restaurant in town, not fancy, but decent." "I would like that." Owen touched the brim of his hat and stepped out into the night. Katherine watched him go, then closed the door and leaned against it, smiling despite herself. The next 2 weeks passed quickly. Katherine threw herself into preparing for school, organizing her books, planning lessons, getting to know the community. Owen rode into town twice during that time, both times finding excuses to stop by and see her. The first time he brought her a small cactus flower, improbably beautiful and delicate. The second time, he brought her a jar of honey from a woman who kept bees on her ranch. Each visit was brief but charged with an awareness that was building between them. They talked about everything and nothing, their conversations ranging from books to cattle to the politics of Arizona territory. Katherine found herself watching for him, listening for the sound of Buck's hoofbeats, looking for any excuse to see him. On the Saturday before school started, Owen took her to dinner at the restaurant, a small establishment run by a Mexican woman named Rosa, who served the best food Katherine had tasted since leaving Philadelphia. They sat at a corner table, and Owen was polite and attentive, pulling out her chair, asking about her preferences, treating her with a respect that made her feel valued. "Tell me about your ranch," Katherine said as they ate Rosa's famous enchiladas. "It is small," Owen said, "about 500 acres with a decent water source. I run maybe 200 head of cattle, sell them in Tucson twice a year. It is hard work, but it is mine. Built the house myself, just a simple adobe, but it is solid. Do you have help?" "Got a hired hand named Miguel who helps during roundup and branding. Otherwise, I manage on my own. It is lonely sometimes," he admitted, "but I am used to my own company." "Do you want it to always be that way?" Katherine asked. "Lonely?" Owen set down his fork and looked at her directly. "No," he said quietly. I do not. Katherine, I know it is fast, and I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but I need you to know something. When I found you in that canyon, when I thought you might die before I could help you, something changed in me. And spending time with you since, getting to know you, it has only gotten stronger. What has gotten stronger? Katherine asked, though she thought she knew. What I feel for you, Owen said. I am falling in love with you, Katherine. Maybe already have fallen. I know it is too soon to say such things, but I'm not a man who plays games or hides what he feels. Katherine's breath caught. It is not too soon, she said. Or if it is, then I am guilty of the same. I think about you constantly, Owen. When you are gone, I count the days until I might see you again. When you are here, I do not want you to leave. Owen reached across the table and took her hand. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gentle caress that sent shivers through her. Then we are agreed, he said. This is something real. Yes, Katherine whispered. This is something real. They finished their meal in a warm glow, talking about the future in careful, hopeful terms. Owen spoke of expanding his ranch, of the possibility of bringing in more cattle, of building a life that could support a family. Katherine talked about her dreams for the school, about teaching not just reading and writing, but about opening her students' minds to the wider world. As Owen walked her home under a sky brilliant with stars, he took her hand. The touch was innocent but intimate, and Katherine felt the rightness of it in her bones. At her door, Owen stopped and turned to face her. May I kiss you? He asked. Yes, Katherine said. He cupped her face gently, his rough hands tender against her skin, and kissed her. It was soft and sweet, a question and a promise all at once. Katherine's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. When they parted, both were breathless. Good night, Katherine, Owen said softly. Good night, Owen. School started on Monday, and Katherine discovered that she loved teaching even more than she had imagined. The children were eager to learn, and their parents were supportive. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, and history, adapting her lessons to the needs and abilities of each child. The older students helped the younger ones, and slowly a real classroom community began to form. Owen continued to court her properly, visiting when he could, always respectful, always mindful of her reputation. They took walks together in the evening, attended church together on Sundays, and talked for hours about their hopes and dreams. The town grew accustomed to seeing them together, and the gossip shifted from scandalous speculation to romantic approval. Reverend Matthews and his wife made it clear they thought Owen and Katherine were well suited. Mrs. Henderson told Katherine privately that she had never seen Owen look at anyone the way he looked at her. As autumn approached and the brutal heat of summer began to ease, Katherine felt herself settling into her new life. She had friends in Agua Caliente, a purpose in her teaching, and a love that was growing deeper every day. One evening in late October, Owen took her out to his ranch for the first time. They rode double on Buck, Katherine seated in front of Owen, his arms around her as he held the reins. The ride took about an hour, and the landscape was beautiful in the slanting autumn light. Owen's ranch was nestled in a valley with mountains rising to the east. The house was as he had described, simple, solid, built of adobe with a covered porch and a view that stretched for miles. There were corrals for the horses and cattle, a barn, a windmill turning slowly against the sky. What do you think? Owen asked as they stood on the porch. It is beautiful, Katherine said honestly, peaceful. It could be bigger, Owen said. With work, with time, I could expand. Build a better house, one with more rooms, start a real future here. He was not quite proposing, but Katherine heard the question beneath his words. I think any future built here would be a good one, she said carefully, with the right person. Owen turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Katherine Foster, I love you. I loved you from the moment I saw you fighting to survive in that canyon. I loved you when you stood up to the people who had wronged you. I loved you when I saw you teaching those kids, giving them something precious. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you here. Will you have me?" Katherine felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Owen, I will marry you. I love you too, more than I knew I could love anyone." Owen let out a whoop of joy that echoed across the valley, then swept Katherine into his arms and spun her around. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, and Katherine felt like she was flying. They were married a month later, in November of 1881, in the small church in Agua Caliente. The whole town turned out for the wedding. Katherine wore a dress that Mrs. Henderson and the other women had made for her, white lace over blue silk. Owen wore a new suit that made him look uncomfortable but handsome. Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony, and there was not a dry eye in the church when Owen and Katherine exchanged their vows. The reception was held in the schoolhouse, which the community had decorated with autumn flowers and ribbons. There was food and music and dancing. Owen danced with Katherine, holding her close, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you," he whispered in her ear as they swayed to the music. "For what?" Katherine asked. "For saying yes, for taking a chance on a cowboy, for building this life with me." "Thank you for finding me," Katherine said, "for saving me, for showing me the safe path home." That night, Owen took his bride to his ranch, which was now their ranch. He carried her over the threshold, and they began their life together. Katherine continued teaching at the school, riding into town 3 days a week. Owen worked his ranch, expanding slowly but steadily. They worked together to build their future, and their love grew deeper with each passing season. In the spring of 1882, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. Owen was overjoyed, immediately becoming overprotective and insisting she take better care of herself. Their son was born in December of that year, a healthy baby boy they named Matthew, after Katherine's father. 2 years later, their daughter arrived, a tiny thing with her father's gray eyes and her mother's dark hair. They named her Rose, after Owen's mother. Life on the ranch was hard work, but it was good work. They had difficult times, drought years when the cattle struggled, winters when money was tight, but they faced everything together, and their partnership made them stronger. Katherine's school flourished. Over the years, she taught hundreds of children, and several of her former students went on to become teachers themselves. She was respected and loved in the community, and she never regretted her decision to come west. Owen's ranch grew into one of the most successful in the area. He earned a reputation as an honest dealer and a skilled cattleman, but his greatest pride was always his family. In 1885, they learned that Calloway had finally faced justice. He had abandoned another traveler in New Mexico territory, but this time the victim's family had money and influence. Calloway was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 10 years in prison. When Owen heard the news, he held Katherine close and said, "Good. The world is safer without men like him preying on innocent people." As the years passed, Katherine and Owen added 2 more children to their family, another son in 1887 and a third boy in 1890. Their house expanded with their family, room by room, until it was a comfortable home full of laughter and love. They grew old together, Owen's hair turning silver, Katherine's face gaining the kind of beautiful lines that came from a life well lived. They sat on their porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains, holding hands like young sweethearts. Katherine never forgot those terrible days in the desert, dying of thirst and fear, but she also never forgot the moment she saw Owen riding toward her, a dark shape against the sun, bringing water and safety and, though she had not known it then, love. "Do you ever think about that day?" Owen asked her once when they were both in their 50s and their children were grown with families of their own. "Which day?" Katherine asked, though she knew. "The day I found you." "Every day," Katherine said honestly. "It changed everything. Not just because you saved my life, though you did, but because it brought me to you." "I think about it too," Owen said. I think about how close I came to not going that way, to not checking on that water hole. If I had made a different choice, if I had been a day earlier or later, I would never have found you. But you did find me, Katherine said, squeezing his hand. And that is what matters. You found me and you showed me the safe path, not just that day, but every day since. Owen pulled her close, and they sat together as the stars began appearing in the darkening sky. The same stars that had watched over them on that long ago night when a dying school teacher and a cowboy had found each other in the desert. Their love story became something of a legend in Agua Caliente. People told it to newcomers about how the school teacher had been left to die and how Owen Porter had saved her, and how that terrible beginning had led to the most beautiful marriage anyone had ever seen. Katherine and Owen lived into their 70s, surrounded by children and grandchildren who adored them. When Katherine finally passed away in 1908, peacefully in her sleep, Owen held her hand until the end. He followed her 6 months later, and the whole territory mourned their passing. They were buried side by side in the cemetery on the hill overlooking Agua Caliente, their headstones simple but inscribed with words that told their story. She was lost. He found her. Together, they found home. The schoolhouse that Katherine had taught in for over 25 years was renamed in her honor. The ranch that Owen had built became home to generations of his descendants, but their real legacy was not in buildings or land, but in the love they had shared and the example they had set. Because sometimes in the hardest moments when everything seems lost and the path forward is unclear, someone comes along and shows you the way. Sometimes that someone becomes your whole world. Sometimes being lost is exactly how you find where you are meant to be. And sometimes the most dangerous shortcut leads you straight to the love of your life.